So we can start off pretty easy. How did you first meet Dale? What was your first impression of him?
The first time I met Dale Snodgrass was, I want to say, the EAA Oshkosh Air Show. It's America's largest air show in 2009. I was flying a A4 Skyhawk. He was flying an F-86 Sabre. Jerry Jive Kirby was flying an F-4 Phantom. And basically, it was this kind of Vietnam heritage flight, although the Sabre really didn't fit in that. But Snort fits into everything. And you just by you meeting him, you knew that you were talking to a legend, but then you quickly hear about the legendary status of Snort and his whole career in naval aviation and airshow flying and such.
Can you speak into that? What made Dale such an exceptional pilot?
He was absolutely. Dale Snodgrass was the best of the best. I mean, he filmed a lot of the scenes in the movie Top Gun. He was the Navy Fighter Pilot of the Year when Top Gun came out. He led all the F-14 Tomcats, which was in Top Gun in Desert Storm. He taught at Top Gun by flying the same airplanes that you saw the instructors in Top Gun do. I mean, he was the guy. He was like the real life Maverick, if you will. And he demonstrated it in all of his flying. He was the highest timed F-14 Tomcat pilot in the world, left the Navy with 8,000 hours. There was that famous photo of the F-14 passing in front of the aircraft carrier, like at knife edge that, it almost turned, like, it's been viral many times of like the pilot who did this was suspended and grounded forever. He wasn't. That was just how he flew. Flew lower than everybody else, faster, better. Just a true legend of naval aviation and across the airshow community.
Do you have any stories about Dale that kind of perfectly encaptures his personality and who he was?
I have a lot of stories about Snort, and I think most of them are not are not good for the public. And I think everybody who knows Snort has very similar ones in that regard. I just would say that whenever you were in the air with him, it was very obvious that you were flying with, one of the best pilots in the world. And whenever you were with him on the ground, whether you were talking about something aviation related, a brief or a debrief, you knew you were in the presence of excellence. And if it was just anything else going on in your life, there was no better person to get advice from.
What were some of those leadership qualities that he
had? I would say the first is, ownership, in that he took responsibility for when things, of course, go right, which is easy, and especially when things went wrong. And I'll tell you, having been in the debrief with him many, many times, Snort was always the first to speak up when he got something wrong. And I screwed this up, and here's why. Now, whatever he was doing that he screwed up was probably one of the hardest maneuvers any pilot could do. But he spoke up first and said what he got wrong for a lot of reasons, right? One, to encourage everyone else. Another, to say, like, in what we do, mistakes can happen, but we're not going to learn from them if we don't have that kind of culture of communicating. Also, it was a statement of confidence, like coming out and saying when we mess something up, right? You knew that he understood and the rest of us understood what he got wrong, and you were going to learn from it. And it was never going to happen again. It's an extremely rare quality, especially among fighter pilots, because a lot of times you would talk around it and like try and, rationalize the mistake or pretend it didn't happen. And those are dangerous pilots because they're not acknowledging what they got wrong. And it's almost guaranteed you're going to see it again. And the consequence when you see it again can be really bad. Snort was never like that. So like, not only when he flew was he exceptional at what he did, any imperfections, anything he got wrong, he was the first person to bring it out in the debrief. And it would be like, I screwed this up. It set such a great tone for everyone else, but it was a lot to learn from, right? And I think that goes beyond just what happens in the sky. Like, that is a real leadership quality right now, that when something goes wrong, the first place I'm going to look is within, right? And it sets a great culture for everybody that follows.
It seems like you've learned a lot of the way you lead with NASA from Dale as well. How would you say that the qualities he has can inspire the generations that are coming after him?
Well, I would certainly say that. I mean, Snort, aside from him being one of my closest friends in that regard, he was certainly a mentor in that. And there is a reason why he has legendary status. Why so many people follow him. He is a great leader. He is extremely good. I would say from the get go. Like it's generally speaking, you don't have a lot of people that are willing to kind of follow you in battle if you're not competent. So step one, if you're going to be a leader in something, especially demanding and dangerous, be extremely good at it. Incredibly personable and likable. I mean, and that matters. How many people, even if they're competent, are you willing to follow into the tough days if you don't like them? I mean, when you were likable in that regard, you had a great personality. It's like I would follow this person anywhere, and when there are especially challenging times, I want to be next to that person. Like I said, the ownership for certainly things that are going right, you would expect that of a great leader and somebody very competent in what they do. But even when you get things wrong, when you make mistakes, being the first person to come out and take ownership of those situations inspires confidence. So I think he had a lot of great leadership qualities about him, and again, I think that the outpouring when he passed away from across everywhere, government, the Navy, the Air Force, the general public that had watched him perform. I mean, it was incredible.
When future generations look back at his life and his story, what do you hope they remember the most?
Well, I would hope that they remember him for his work. I mean, he had flown in, I don't know, thousands of air shows, and I mean, I can't tell you how many probably children watched him perform that grew up and became pilots, served in the Navy, in the Air Force. If they didn't become pilots, they probably still were called to serve because he was such a great ambassador for the Navy for all those years, and then continued on that service in the air show world. So I think people will look back, watch his videos from times past, and be like, that was one of the greatest pilots of his generation, and inspired so many to try and be even a fraction of as good as he was.
So I'm going to connect his legacy to the St. Augustine Airport. He spent much of his life around that airport. What do you think made it such a meaningful place for him?
Well, Snort, he did live in St. Augustine for a really long time. He flew out of St. Augustine. Now, he had a close connection to Northrop, and when you think of Snort and airplanes, he is most often associated with the Northrop Grumman F-14 Tomcat. So maybe he just wanted to be somewhat close to home in that regard. But he would fly and perform out of that airport. I know that some of my first air show training with him when we flew together on air show teams was actually at St. Augustine. It was one of his happy places.
How do airports like St. Augustine Airport help preserve aviation history and inspire future generations?
Well, I'll just tell you, I think airports are great, right? I mean, you have air shows with it, families, people come out and want to hang out along the fence line and just, even if it's not like the super cool fighter jets from time to time, but just seeing planes take off and land can really, really captivate people, get people interested, maybe even shape entire career trajectories. Now, it goes a lot farther than that when you're the home airport of the great Dale Snodgrass. Like that airport, yeah, you almost have an obligation to preserve some of his legacy because that goes beyond the normal inspiration in aviation. Like that is, it's just. Yeah, it's not. I guess it's just not. It's not every day that you have one of the true best of the best in their trade that calls your airport home.
How do you think he would feel knowing his story is going to inspire future generations, and that's part of the St. Augustine Airport in this documentary that's being made?
I think that Snort was. He certainly knew that he had one heck of a following. And yet he was so humble. I mean, he was totally just a man of the people, right? I mean, after an air show in front of a million people, he'd be, out at the performers parties, the restaurants, and he would just hang out with all the fans and tell them stories and get them excited about it. So, I think knowing that his story was being captured Some of the great moments throughout his career, would continue to be told, and ideally inspire the next Snort to grow up and do what he did. I think that would make him really happy.
Looking back on your relationship with him, what are you most grateful for?
I think just the fact that I got to fly with Snort as often as I did, spend so many years learning from him in the air, on the ground, at the bar, hearing all the great stories, learning from him it was just an absolute privilege of a lifetime. I would say probably the most special moment, though also quite sad too, is that when he died, it was only months. Really less than 2 months from when I went to space the first time. So I like to think I had, one last flight with him when I flew his ashes into space.
If you had one more opportunity to speak to him today, what would you say?
I would definitely be asking for his advice. He would already know, because I think there's a lot of interest in what we're trying to do here at NASA right now. And so he would already have the picture, and then I'm sure I would ask him what he would do, and I know it would be very good advice.
And if anybody's watching this, what is one thing you want them to remember after hearing about Snort?
I think he was, it's very easy to see why he was such an extraordinary pilot. And I would just say, just know that for everything he accomplished flying as a great aviator, he was just as good of a human being, a friend, a father and a grandfather. He was just truly one of the greats.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked that you would like people to know?
So many stories.
You have one good story, that'd be awesome.
They're just
They're all too inappropriate.
Generally, he was a fighter pilot's fighter pilot in that regard. Let's see, what would be... I think something that just connects across a lot of my time flying with him, and there were quite literally like hundreds of pretty outrageous stories that go along the way, is he did a great job, and I think this is pretty inherent in fighter pilots, and it is certainly in astronauts as well, is that in very complex situations, especially ones that you can't turn back from, how do you distill that complexity down, to the one thing that needs to be done in near milliseconds in order to find your way through it? And there were just so many examples of that where you just had to kind of hack it, and that there was no point in that particular situation thinking about how you got in that situation, or panic, or any uneasiness that would come away from the absolute extreme focus that needed to be brought for a split-second decision that could be life or death. And when you're flying, 18 inches apart from another aircraft, and you're flying literally, feet off of the ground, that becomes so important. And I think that he did a great job of being a teacher of that through so many circumstances. And I can tell you several times when I was in space and you were faced with similar situations, I would just think back on all those stories, all those moments together, and just say, this is what you need to do to hack it. Like, this is how you get through this particular moment. And there's no point in thinking about anything else other than what it takes right now to get through this situation. And he was a great teacher of that. He practiced it very well. And it's, I think, made a big difference in my aviation and spaceflight career.